Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rotary International World Peace Conference here in California. This session is about the Indus Peace Park. So it says on the screen, we may have all come on different ships, but we're all in the same boat now. So my ship, well, my father's ship started out in India, ended up in London, England. Norman, here on my left, his ship left Scotland and ended up in Canada. On my right here we've got Mayumi, whose ship left Japan and ended up in Canada. Muhammad, Assistant Governor, his ship left London, no, he left Pakistan and ended up in London. And then we have Case, whose ship left the Netherlands and arrived in Canada. So at this point, let me invite Case to take over the presentation and tell you how the story started and developed. Case.
Thank you, Tony. I just want to show you a little slide here. This is where I live. For all of you in California, this is my piece of heaven. It's a place called Nakusp. It's 5 hours north of Spokane, Washington. How is it that a retired high school principal is here talking to you about the creation of an international peace park on the border of India and Pakistan? How I got to Nakusp is a whole other story, and there are so many connections and so many coincidences that happened that caused us to be there. But I'm here to tell you about the Peace Park Initiative. How and where did it all begin? But before I can talk about Indus Peace Park, I need to talk about this guy, Norm McCarville, District Governor for District 5080. When he was in the governor line, he needed somebody to replace himself as an assistant governor, and he came to our club, to Nakusp, population 1,500, Rotary Club of 8, and he said, Case, you should consider becoming the next person in line to be governor. To make a long story short, I accepted, and 2 years later, I was the district governor. So that was the first influence that Norm had on me. Very powerful start to my Rotary career. The second was when I was in governor training. And at that time, I was very much interested in doing a national immunization day to deliver polio vaccine somewhere in the world. And Brad Howard, international director, had a trip planned to India, and I signed up for that trip, not knowing that my wife, who was in a different session, was signing up for a polio immunization trip to Ethiopia. So when we told Norm that we were doing this, he said, why are you doing that? You should go on the District 5080 trip to Pakistan. It's a friendship exchange and an NID. So I said, it doesn't matter where I go, I'll go to Pakistan. So, signed up for this friendship exchange. I was just going to be a member, and then unfortunately the leader had to bow out, and it was upon me to lead our group of 4, 2 from Washington State and my wife and I. You have to understand that 2 months after the school massacre at Peshawar, as you can see there, we entered Lahore. Now, and we had a lot of people, colleagues, relatives, friends say, why are you doing this? Pakistan is such a dangerous place. But we were Rotarians, both my wife and I. And we knew that millions of people go to Pakistan every year. So we decided to go. And of course, the highlight was the administration of polio drops. That actually became my governor's story when I traveled around to all 57 clubs in 5080, all about that aspect of my trip. There were 2 events that we were supposed to see that were more of a cultural situation. The first was a cricket match in Faisalabad. We were denied that opportunity. Our host said it was the security risks were too high to travel to that city at that time. And the second was seeing the changing of the guard at Wagah border crossing with India. Again, security was such that it was too dangerous for us to travel there. And you have to understand that when we were in Pakistan, a Pakistan NID worker was actually executed while we were there. We were not told about it until we returned home. So we were denied those two cultural events. So here's where the third influence comes in from Norm. He was and is a director on the Waterton Glacier International Peace Park Association. And it's on the border of Alberta, Canada, and Montana, United States. Waterton Park is north of the border, Glacier Park is south. And when we were denied access to Wagah border crossing ceremony, I thought of one of our missions. And as you can see, may the long existing peace between our two nations, Canada and the United States, stimulate other peoples to follow this example. And that's when I said to my host, you know what, you've got that no man's land. What about if we turn that into an everyone's land and make it a peace park, a place of peace, where people can get together and share culture, share history, share food for both sides of the border. And so we decided to do it in Punjab. And the reason for that is that they do have that common culture, that common heritage, common language, common traditions. But how do you make it happen? And it's all about connections. Life is all about destiny. While I was in Pakistan, I'd heard about an English gentleman that was trying to create a peace park on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And for 2 years after my trip to Pakistan, I was trying to find out who this person was and make contact with him. Never happened. I have no idea why it never happened, but it didn't. But in Atlanta at the International Convention, Shazad on the left-hand side, one of our hosts from Pakistan, said, Case, I want to introduce you to someone. And the guy in the blue shirt was introduced to me, Tony Sharma. And you know how Rotarians just kind of talk about their classification and their passions and their projects and so on and so forth. We ended up talking about peace and peace efforts. And I stopped Tony and I said, just a minute, are you the Englishman that I've been trying to meet for 2 years? And he looks at me straight in my eyes and he says, you know what, Case? I think I am. And that became an instant friendship because we were on the same page. The next year in Toronto, Tony, who is of Indian ancestry, introduced me to his best friend, Muhammad Ayaz, who is of Pakistani heritage. Tony's a Hindu, Muhammad is a Muslim, and they're the best of friends. So the three of us became best of friends. Now what do we do about creating an international peace park? Well, we decided to create an organization. And it was ended up being supported by 9 Rotary districts. First thing is to get a committee together. And as you can see, these 12 members, the 6 on top are from India and Pakistan. We have 2 Canadians, an American, Tony and Mo, and Josephine from Kenya. We are all Rotarians. So we got that steering committee started, and then, all of a sudden, Mo said, I've got an idea. How about we launch the initiative in the Houses of Parliament? And let's do it on March the 4th. So my wife and I, we booked our tickets, ready to go to London. Norm booked his tickets. And then 3 weeks prior to that meeting, a suicide bomber from Pakistan attacks Indian troops in Kashmir. Soon after that, India responded. Now the question is, do we still go? Why are you going there, Case? What's the point? But this is the point. We must be the change we want to see in the world. If we want to make this peace park, we need to go, despite the problems. And so we went. And there's our group in London. 2 days before the launch, we met the High Commissioner from Pakistan to the UK. Unfortunately, he and his Indian counterpart were not able to make it to our launch, but we went ahead anyway. It was that important to us. So on March the 4th, our host was the Right Honourable Stephen Timms, MP and former Cabinet Minister. And that's where we met, in the Houses of Parliament. This is what it looks like inside. And this is Committee Room 10. We had over 100 invited guests, which included High Commissioners, Ambassadors, London Borough Mayors, high-ranking Rotarians, and people representing Hinduism, Islam, and Sikhism. This is what it looked like from the front table and the other side. These are 4 of the London Borough mayors that attended. Rotary International President Brian Stoyle spoke up and very proudly provided his support for our initiative. I spoke up and I started with a minute of silence to recognize all those people that were killed, that were injured, that lost loved ones in partition in 1947. Stephen Timms spoke. Debbie Hodge, who is the president of Rotary International British Isles, spoke. Norm spoke about the Waterton Glacier International Peace Park. We had a member of the House of Lords, and we had Adnan Sarwar, who with his fellow documentarist, he traveled up the west side of the India-Pakistan border. She traveled up the east side through India, and they were comparing notes as they worked their way north. Very powerful documentary. It's in 3 parts, and I highly recommend that you watch Dangerous Borders, A Journey Across India and Pakistan. So we launched the event. But why are we doing this? And to talk about this, I'm going to invite Mohammed to come and tell his story to the rest of you. Mohammed.
Thank you, Case. Well, my passion is very similar to the passion that we all have, but my particular angle is personal. It's my father. My father was in the British Indian Army in the signals, and he lived through partition. And he never talked about what happened. And it's only after his passing that I looked through his possessions and documents, and I found photographs of him in service for both the British Indian Army, but later the Pakistani Army. And it made me want to look into my heritage. So I managed to speak at the event and launch at Parliament, and my message was clear, that we have to look at what we have in common and not what divides us. So when I looked into my heritage, I found I had cousins who were Hindu, they were Sikh, they were Christian, and I've even got a relative who is Jewish. And when you think that you are blood relations, it seems ridiculous to be doing this sort of violence and war, etc. It seems pointless. When you look at the proud history of people from the subcontinent, especially from India, as it was in under the British, and afterwards when there were 3 separate countries eventually, the key factor was they fought together as brothers in arms, to protect our liberty and freedom, both in the First World War, the Second World War, etc. But when India got its independence and Pakistan got its independence, they returned from their army careers, like my father, to find from an orderly profession and proud profession of the armed forces, they came back to chaos and genocide. And that's probably why my father didn't speak too much about that, because it must have been such a time that we could not possibly imagine when we sit comfortably at home watching our soap operas, etc. We can't understand the gallantry and the sacrifice that these people make and people of the armed forces generally make on our behalf. I found out and researched that both the Pakistani army and the Indian army are major contributors towards UN peace missions around the world. And they've even worked together on a number of occasions. And it became more ludicrous what was happening in the subcontinent, because if they can go and ensure and look after and monitor peace in different parts of the world, why can't they do it at home? So that's my passion for joining this project. We would, with the Indus Peace Park project, create an oasis of peace. Not India, not Pakistan, but an area where school children could meet, where people could come and enjoy their culture. There could be concerts to do with peace, etc. There's so many ideas and so many partners who have come to us and want to collaborate with us. But we need our colleagues in India and Pakistan to do the groundwork, because they're the people on the ground. It was very important when we did the launch that we involved people from the subcontinent who are in the British Armed Forces, and they came to give their support to what we were doing, because the first casualty of any war are soldiers, and they tend to be, in the subcontinent, the major breadwinners. So there's a knock-on effect everywhere. Here you can see how happy these guardians of peace were for us, and how much they really desired peace in their place of heritage, whether it's India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or anywhere in the subcontinent. And I'd like to end by a quote from President Kennedy. Our task is not to fix or blame for the past. It is to set a course for the future. And this is our humble intention of this project. And I'm going to pass you over to District Governor for London, Tony Sharma, to continue our story. Thank you.
So thank you, Mo. So it was my turn at the House of Parliament to talk about why I'm in it. So as a Rotarian, back in 2015 I was asked to go to Pakistan on a National Immunisation Day and a polio conference. And at once I agreed. It's the kind of thing we Rotarians do. And I went home thinking, great, we're going to finish this polio and I'm going to get really involved. Until I told my wife, who was less than amused. She called me many things, which I dare not say on camera. But basically she called me a right idiot. I said, why? She goes, have a look at yourself. I said, she goes, where are you from? I said, North Windsor. It's a little town near Slough. She goes, go and look in the mirror. I looked in the mirror. Looks fine. She says, you're Indian. You're going to Pakistan. They just kind of happen to be at war. Look what's happening in Kashmir. So I said, well, afraid the deal is done. We live and die by our sword. We're Rotarians. So as we're preparing, I left for Pakistan. I recalled my trip to Ethiopia, National Immunisation Day in 2014, and this is wonderful. We're doing what we're there to do, giving the drops to children, saving lives. And how many of you have been here on National Immunisation Days? Okay, so this is a picture you would relate to.
Yes.
It's a real great time.
Yes, that's a wonderful experience.
So, this is what I was expecting when I went to Pakistan, except I didn't realise or think, and then I became worried near the time that, am I going to actually get through the border, or are they going to let me in the country? But they did. And off we went and arrived in Pakistan, and this is how I was greeted. Now you have to understand that I'm from England. We don't know what guns really are. We just see them in westerns on TV and stuff. This is my security detail. And those really are real guns. But this is the reality. This is why it's so difficult to finish polio, because we need this type of security just to do our work. So I was doing the polio eradication program and I went to the NID. And this is Pakistan. Now whoever told you that a picture tells 1,000 words lied. Okay, because this doesn't show you the military force I had behind me. It doesn't tell you what happened immediately before this picture was taken. What had happened was that this guy had given me his child to immunise and the 2 drops when he read my name on my shirt. And he straight away realised that I was Hindu. He didn't see the Union Jack down from England, he just said, "You're Hindu, you're Indian, it's true what they say, the West are trying to poison our children." And he grabbed his child away. Now I was getting a bit worried, so I clenched my fists. I'm not a small guy, I can look after myself. So I thought to myself, well, here we go, get ready son, there could be a bit of trouble here. And a couple of other Pakistani Rotarians who were on the immunisation came to my support. And I said, look, if you don't want me to do it, that's fine. Look at the lines of people who are waiting to be done. Look at the lines of people who have had their children done. And the Pakistanis were saying in their own language about, look, he's here to save your child. And he said something like, why would an Indian save a Pakistani child's life? I've had a very simple answer. I said, my friend, yes, I'm Hindu. I'm from North Windsor. But we have one belief. We are all God's children. That led him into tears, and he handed his child back. And he was grateful that there was an Indian giving the 2 drops. So that's my little story about why I'm here. We are all God's children. So I'd like to pass on to Case now to carry on.